Hello, BookTube. It's a bright, beautiful summer day here in Boston, and very, very early this morning I went downtown. And when I was done with all the stuff that I had to do downtown, I was right near the Brattle bookshop, a great used bookstore in downtown Boston. Place that I love to go to. Just endless turnover of an endless variety of books. And with a sale lot outside, that's where the books are $1, $3, or $5 each, so not expensive at all. Plus, I know the staff. I know a lot of people on the staff. I know them well, so it's fun to just meet and chat with them. It was perfect pick-me-up, and it was perfectly timed. So I went to the Brattle, and I got a lot of books. I thought I'd show them to you. You probably know the drill by now. The first three that we'll look at are mass market paperbacks. Murder mysteries. Bookish murder mysteries. I remember selling these things in bookstores, but I never read them. I've never tried them. I found one of them when I was prowling around outside at the Brattle sale lot. You have to, the sale lot is not organized in any way except by price. So if you want to see what's out there, you really have to slice off some time and just go through it book by book. It can be a little time consuming, but it's usually well worth it. And I found one of these books. I found three. I've got three here to show you. I found one of them and thought, well, March Mystery Madness isn't for quite some time, and I'm not really all that in love with mass market paperbacks anymore. And then I was at a different cart and found another one in the series, and then a third one in the series, and so I went back and got the other two, because if I just got one of these things at the Brattle, I know perfectly well that I would read it, love it, and then wish that I had gotten the other two. So I got all three. These, a lot of you will probably be familiar with these. These are by Julie Kaywert, and they are a book lover's mystery. The first one is Unprintable, then Unbound, and then Untitled. And they are book lover mysteries. Those of you who are very young, that is a telephone. I know what you're saying, that what is this device and why is its charging cord connected in such an awkward way? But it's actually not a charging cord. This is actually, the whole thing is a telephone. This part of the device won't work without this part, and this part won't work without that part. I know. It seems strange to me too. But these are all about Plumtree Publishing in England. And they're all book world related mysteries. Let me read you the synopses here so that you can so you know what I'm talking about here. Plumtree Press is about to launch a bombshell of a book, a fact-based novel about one of Britain's most revered authors, a member of Virginia Woolf's Bloomsbury Group. Angela Mayfield's shocking book reveals a series of explosive secret messages in the author's own novels published at the turn of the century, messages that implicate him in the secrets of publishers' past and treacherous plot to topple the monarchy. It soon becomes clear to publisher Alex Plumtree that someone will go to any length to keep Angela's revelations from seeing print. So a very bookish mystery. Then we have Unprintable. Is it possible that the most repugnant piece of fiction in all of England? So why is Plumtree Press, one of the country's most respectable publishing houses, about to add the hotly controversial new novel to its list? Publisher Alex Plumtree isn't talking, so hardly anyone knows he has taken on the project as a favor to the Prime Minister. And then finally, Untitled. Publisher Alex Plumtree is in for the most astounding week of his life. First, he comes into possession of a rare, centuries-old book rumored destroyed on the orders of King Edward IV. Then he receives an undreamed-of honor, an invitation to join a select society of book collectors, who are also some of the most powerful men and women in England. But Alex's triumph quickly turns sour. The book vanishes from his office. His initiation weekend at the Dibdin Club is rife with bizarre behavior, appalling accidents, and a death that sends Alex reeling. He quickly begins to suspect that his valuable find is even more than it seemed on first glance. These seem like so much fun. I'm kind of amazed that I didn't get to them, and I don't know that this series went on. I have no idea. A lot of times, these all came out in the 90s, and a lot of times, I think it was the 90s. Maybe it was the 80s. No, I think these came out in the 90s. Yeah, these came out in the late 90s. Probably one a year. And I, off the top of my head, don't remember if there were any more of them. A lot of times in the late 80s and throughout the 90s, you would get a very interesting, unusual murder mystery series like this, and it wouldn't go any longer than 3 books. The classic 3-book deal. It would be that, and it would be maybe 10 years later from some other publisher would limp along a 4th book. So I grabbed all of these on the chance that this is all there are, and also the good likelihood that if there are more, they will turn up at the Brattle. They will have been sold to the shop by the same person who sold these. But March Mystery Madness will come, and I'm always in the mood for a murder mystery. And these are all bookish, so that's fantastic. And what else we got here? Oh, another paperback. This is a novel that came out in the 1980s. I haven't read it since then. I loved it. At the time, I loved it. This is by Robert Plunkett, and it's My Search for Warren Harding. And it's about a guy who is trying to track down a trove of former U.S. President Warren Harding's personal papers, and who falls into, if I remember correctly, into a relationship with a woman who may be a descendant of Warren Harding. One way or another, I remember really enjoying this, but I haven't read it since this was been the mid-'80s when this came out. Well, okay, this, came out in 1983. And then this Harper paperback came out in 1993 or 1992. It's probably the 1992 paperback. My paperback looked just like this, and it's long, long gone. God knows where that is. Probably in a box in silt at the bottom of the Mississippi River. So I was happy to find this again. Not usually ecstatic about contemporary fiction, but I'll be interested to reread this, see how much of it I remember, see how much of it has maybe grown on me. Then there's another paperback, more fiction, this time epic fantasy. Obviously a case of the same person selling books to the Brattle. Because I'm part of a Voxer group of cool kids who are reading the books of Shannara by Terry Brooks, starting with the Sword of Shannara and moving on from there. And one by one, I have been finding these things. First, the Sword of Shannara, then the what is it? The Elfstones of Shannara, I think is the second one. And then I found this third one today, the Wish Song of Shannara. Again, with the classic fantasy cover. I'm not sure how many more had these kind of cover designs. In fact, Wish Song of Shannara might have been the last one that did. Where you have the Dowie Suite cover illustration and the scroll work up here and the embossed lettering and everything. This may have been the last one that looks like this. And this is not a mass market, unlike the other two. This is a trade paperback. But for $1, I wasn't going to turn it down. And then we have only one other paperback here. And I grabbed it because I have always wanted to read this thing again. I never really thought that I would find it as a trade paperback. But I was happy to get it. This is Russell Kirk's book on Edmund Burke, a genius reconsidered. And Russell Kirk is a fascinating figure in his own right. I've read a collection of letters of his, I've read a biography of his, and of course I've read the Viking Portable Conservative Reader. Russell Kirk was, in his own day, an indefatigable literary presence, first of all. There was never a day, nor an afternoon, nor almost an hour when he wasn't writing something. But he was also, oddly enough, characterized as a voice of post-war conservatism. And I don't know how much of that holds today. I'm not 100% sure that there's any through line between what Russell Kirk would have called, or for that instance, William F. Buckley would have called conservatism, and conservatism as it is known in the 21st century in America. There is no way to legitimately, justifiably, and innocently refer to yourself as a conservative in the 21st century America, because conservatism has been entirely subsumed into racist, sexist, bigoted, xenophobic fascism. The two are the same now in the 21st century. That wasn't always true. In Russell Kirk's day, it certainly wasn't true. He lived long enough to see the first creeping steps in that direction. But of course, that direction was put on turbo boosters by Donald Trump. So that now conservatism in America is Trumpism. And Trumpism is anti-science, it's anti-women, it's anti-anyone who's not white, It's anti-poor people. It's anti-government. It's anti-democracy. It's fascism. It's strongman rule, where there's a guy at the top, and then there are the people in his court. And those courtiers are willing to sacrifice everything, including their individuality. They must speak, think, believe, act solely in accordance with Der Fuhrer's will. And in exchange for surrendering all that, they get the thing that fascist lickspittles always want, which is the ability to crush their enemies. There's no thought of governing. It's just looting. There's no thought of law. It's just larceny. And that is conservatism now. The American Republican Party is the conservative party, and they said at their last political convention that their platform is whatever Donald Trump wants. They didn't draft a platform. So they're not a political party. They're a fascist party. They don't have any planks. They don't have any set core of beliefs, just what Trump wants. And they haven't abandoned it. They had every opportunity to do that when he lost a presidential election and then incited a violent insurrection to overthrow the government. There have been diminishing returns on his alleged popularity for years, but those two things alone gave any Republican who actually wanted to return to Russell Kirk's kind of conservatism the perfect out to do so. None of them took it. So they're on board with this. This is what they want. It's not a question of, well, Trump is an authoritarian and he's a dictator wannabe and he's grotesquely stupid and incredibly bigoted. But we'll put up with that in order to use him to further a political agenda. It's not a case of that. Obviously, it's not a case of that. Instead, the agenda now is the stupidity and the racism and the sexism. Because the Republican Party, writ small, had several perfect opportunities to split those two things apart. And they didn't. They haven't. They don't. So, to the extent where the virus, COVID-19, got a cheer at the CPAC convention just a week ago. A conservative political action committee. The word's right there in the title. The crowd, anyone in that crowd, they might have had differences of opinion about music or food, but they would all have called themselves conservative. And when it was mentioned on stage that vaccination rates were flagging in the United States, a cheer went up. The vaccine, the virus, COVID-19, that's killed millions of people, got cheered at the CPAC convention. That is conservatism in the 21st century, at least in America. So Russell Kirk is a creature from a bygone era now, but he's a heck of a writer. I have heard this Edmund Burke book bashed from one end of creation to the other. Burke scholars tend to sneer at it, but I remember liking it. And Russell Kirk wrote the only book that I have ever found stomachable, the only literary analysis I've ever found bearable on T.S. Eliot. So I was perfectly willing to grab this and give it another try. I don't have a copy of it, and I'm a big fan of Edmund Burke. But I would have grabbed it anyway, but I was even more amazed when I got it back here to realize that this book was owned by our old friend, the Yankee Clipper. It's got tons of clippings in it. A paperback. Which means that this is a previous owner of a lot of these books that I'm finding lately at the Brattle, who went through all of the periodical literature that he also got, clipped out anything connected with the book in question, carefully trimmed it, dated it. You can see it's all dated, carefully dated, so that he knows exactly where it's from, and then folded it and put it in the book in question. Exactly what I do. And this proves to me something that I didn't know before today's trip to the Brattle, which is that the Yankee Clipper was perfectly willing to do that with a paperback. With an ordinary, we saw an oversized paperback of Ancient Rome. It lends itself to that kind of archival impulse. But this is just a normal trade paperback. This is just someone's book collection that I am bits and pieces reconnecting. And that's wonderful. This is very much worth a reread. It'll probably send me to Burke and also to some of the biographies and literary treatments that I have of Burke. But we'll move on. The next book is Volume 3 in a set of 3. And I grabbed it because I've learned from long experience at the Brattle that if you don't do that, if you leave it, then 2 weeks later, a month later, Volume 1 will show up, or Volume 1 and 2 will show up when Volume 3 is already gone. Picked up by somebody else, thrown away, or whatever. Or just not visible to you when you're scouring the books that day. Of course, I want Volumes 1, 2, and 3 of this set. But I have Volume 3, and I will now work my way back. This is by Leslie Stephen, and this is Hours in a Library. And this is Volume 3. So let me show you the inside here. Yes, there is Hours in a Library. These are collections of literary essays. I don't think there's a photo of the author in here. No? No. Okay. This set came out in 1899, and these are literary essays. Here we have Shelley, I know, is in here. Charlotte Bronte, Charles Kingsley, Sterne, George Eliot, Carlyle. So, you know, the high Victorian authors. And this is, Leslie Stephen was the father of Virginia Woolf and wrote an enormous amount in his lifetime. When he wasn't muckraking, he wrote an enormous amount. And Hours in a Library, it's great to know that this volume turned up. And once again, I'm going to assume, much like with these things, or actually, now that I think about it, much like this as well, there's no chance. The fact that I found 3 Shonara books in 3 consecutive visits at the Brattle, there's no chance that was 3 different people who sold those to the Brattle. That was only one person who did. And the books have just been brought up from the basement, from the pricing table at different times. I am hoping, what are the chances that someone out there had only Volume 3 in Hours in a Library? What are the chances? I think there's a likelihood that Volumes 1 and 2 are somewhere in the Brattle basement, and so will someday make their way up to the sale lot. And if not, well, there'll be other sets. But for now, you know, it's not so much the set, it's the essays that count. And I haven't read Leslie Stephen in quite some time. And I'm sure that I haven't read some of the essays in this thing. So I will read them, and then I will put it in the horrible, disastrous Books About Books bookcase that is totally out of control. And I was staring at it the other day. Unfortunately, those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I had my books about books, my books of essays and collected reviews. I had them in a separate bookcase. That bookcase was incredibly crowded, overcrowded, things double stacked and jammed in everywhere. So I took all those books out. I laid them on the floor. And I picked a bookcase out here in this front room that is tall, floor to ceiling, fairly wide. I took everything off that, found homes for it elsewhere, and moved all of the books about books onto that bookcase thinking this will give me room enough for a long time. And it was filled and jammed and crammed and double stacked in a few seconds. And unfortunately, as random chance would have it, when I am working on this, is that Freya hair you can see? Oh my God, it's, baby, this is your hair we're looking at. We had a little clipping, little emergency clipping. Anyway, as random chance would have it, when I'm sitting back on this couch, I am looking at that Books About Books bookcase. It's never out of my sight, so it's constantly annoying me. And I have recently come to the decision to bite the bullet again. It took a long time to work up the nerve to move all of those books from the little book room the first time. But this problem isn't going to solve itself. And I use those books all the time. And I don't use them if I have to play Jenga with them in order to get one out of there. I have to have easy access to all of these things. This is going to be on that bookcase. So I have decided to do the whole thing again. I have a whole wall of bookcases at a 90-degree angle from that Books on Books bookcase. I have a whole wall of bookcases. I'm going to clear off that wall and just find homes. I'll find room for those books elsewhere, and I'm going to put all of that stuff on that wall, and maybe that will allow me to have room till the end of the year. But anyway, let's move on, because we have a bunch of other great stuff to go through here. This next one is I mentioned the other day that somebody sold a lot of hardcover murder mysteries to the Brattle, and they're in beautiful shape. They all have their dust jackets, and whoever it is put that kind of plastic library covering over every single dust jacket. And I scoured that collection. I ignored it for a while. Then I scoured it just the other day for anything that I might want. And I found a couple of things that I did want. And I'm assuming that this next book was in that collection and just got separated out from it and ended up on some other cart out in the sale lot. This is David Wishart, who a lot of you will know is the author of the Marcus Didius Falco murder mystery set in ancient Rome. There are Marcus... It's Lindsay Davis that does Marcus Didius Falco. These are the Corvinus mysteries. They're very similar. The two series are very similar. I could be excused for blurring them for a moment. But this is the one book that David Wishart did that is not part of that series. And I've never seen it before, much less seen it in hardcover with a plastic mylar sheath over it. This is I, Virgil, which is a straight-up historical novel about the Roman poet Virgil. This is not a case of, like, for instance, David Wishart, soon after this, I believe, wrote a murder mystery called Ovid, which is also about an ancient Roman poet. Never makes an appearance. He's dead by the time the book starts. But that is a Corvinus mystery. There's a murder mystery involved. Why was Ovid exiled to the Black Sea? And many books followed, and they're all murder mystery series, but this is not. This is just a straight-up historical novel. I was overjoyed to find it. I've never read it, and here it's in perfect condition. What if I end up liking it more than any of the Corvinus mysteries? Could easily happen. Then this next one is something that I've had many, many times before, but this is in brand new condition with a plastic mylar covering. So I grabbed it. I don't have it. I didn't have it when I saw it. I realized I don't have it here, and I'd love to reread it. This is The World of Herodotus by Aubrey de Selincourt, who also did the Penguin Classic translation of the Histories of Herodotus that I love so much, that I can quote huge chunks of it. I know every detail of that book in that translation. And this is Aubrey de Selincourt writing about the Histories of Herodotus. This is not a translation. This is him writing about those histories and their factual basis, if any, and what we know and don't know, with lots of digressions. Lots of bookish classicist digressions. I've loved this book. Many, many times I've had it. But I didn't have it. When I saw it early this morning, I realized, oh, wow, it's been forever since you had or read a copy of that book. These were all of these things were out on the sale lot. They were all dirt cheap. So I of course, grabbed it. Although I should point out that the goal is always to get keepers. Right? The goal is to get things that I know I'm going to want to keep forever. I'm not 100% sure that's true of the world of Shannara. And I doubt that it's true of these bookish murder mysteries. I'll probably read them and hold on to them for a while, maybe reread them. But I don't think I'll keep them forever. But I'm looking for keepers when I'm at the Brattle, even though the books are so cheap that I don't have to rationalize that way. The only thing that stops me at the Brattle, the time when I know it's time to stop, is when I can't carry anymore, which is the perfect limit that you should always have at any kind of cheap used bookstore. This next one, also in perfect condition, also with a plastic dust jacket. This is One Boy's Boston by the great American historian Samuel Eliot Morison. This is about the swan boats. If any of you have ever been to Boston, you have doubtless been told that you simply got to paddle around the little pond with the swan boats. Even if you haven't been to Boston, you might recognize the swan boats on the little island from Make Way for Ducklings, one of the most popular and best-selling children's books of all time in English language. That a large chunk of the action revolves around the little island there and the trees and the duck boats. But this is Morison just reflecting on his family, his life, Beacon Hill, the Boston Brahmin Society, vanished eccentricities of the period. It's a tiny little thing. It's sort of a codicil to all the great thumping epic histories that he's written. But I love it. It's a great Boston book, and it's a great little book, a great little insight into this author, and I don't have a copy. So I grabbed it. This next one is part of a series. Guinea Books did a series. I think it was called Britain in Pictures. Yes, it's called Britain in Pictures. A huge series of thin hardcovers that all look like this. You can see this one is numbered 96, so there were quite a few of them. All kinds of subjects having to do with Great Britain. This is British Dogs. And what these books are is text and then reproductions of famous visuals as well. So here we have coursing on Epsom Racecourse. Most of this book is about fox hunting, duck hunting, hunting just in general, hunting dogs, but lots of other dogs crop up in here as well. And they're seen through the lens of history, of art, of literature, that sort of thing. These little, what's it called again? Britain in picture books are terrific. They are wonderful. I've had any number of them over the years. It's a long, long series, and at the Brattle this morning, there were quite a few. There was a big sort of shelf of them. So I picked through them. Naturally, I grabbed this one for myself. I also grabbed one of these for Mark Richardson up in Vermont. And if you can find, if you can call up online a list of the Britain in Pictures titles, I'd be willing to bet you can guess which one I got for him. So, but I wasn't going to turn this down. It's a trifle. It's a little thing. But one of the fun things about going to the Brattle, especially the sale lot, is that you can indulge in trifles. You don't have to worry about leaving them aside. And maybe I've had it happen that a trifle becomes a keeper. That could easily happen. This next one, probably not a keeper, but it was $1 and I wanted to revisit it. I very much wanted to revisit it, and I like the way it looks. This is Will and Ariel Durant, who in the 20th century conducted the madcap project of writing a multi-volume history of the world, of human society, humans in the world. And multi-volumes, it covers all sorts of history and literature. It's often extremely good. These things are staples at yard sales and library sales and used bookstores and whatnot. They aren't, I don't think, in print anymore. And because they were staples in attic sales and whatnot, they tended to elicit a little bit of scorn, but they are wonderful. They are really wonderful. And I found volume 11 today, The Age of Napoleon. I have already decided, I decided a while ago, that when it comes to books devoted to the pestiferous little Corsican, I really only wanted Frank McGlynn's biography, which was just recently reprinted. But then I was thinking, no, in addition to that, I might want a Life and Times. I might want a broader outlook on the Napoleonic, what we call the Napoleonic era. And then when I saw this at the Brattle, I realized this is that outlook. This is the one that I want. At least it's incredibly readable. So I will keep I will keep this thing. Oh, wow. Oh, I hadn't noticed that. There are our authors. What a picture. What a fantastic picture. And a lot of times with these Story of Civilization volumes, you'll see them at places like the Brattle used bookstores, but without a dust jacket. Just these uniform, dusty maroon hardcovers. Or if they do have a dust jacket, sometimes the dust jacket is ugly. But this one is nice, has a full color photo. So I grabbed it. I probably will not read it from front to back right away. Instead, I'll pick around. Excuse me. Like, for instance, just the other day, I got the trade paperback of, is it Andrew Curran? I got the trade paperback of the book Diderot and the Art of Thinking Freely. And that, I'll probably go to, Diderot probably has his own subsection in here. Yes, let's see. Napoleon himself. Napoleon in France. Napoleon and the Arts. Literature versus Napoleon. Science and philosophy under Napoleon. Good Lord. The New Empire. Napoleon Ascendant. Oh my. Pause for the siren. Okay, this has Thomas Paine, Pitt, Nelson, Trafalgar. Oh boy. See, the thing is, when you pay $1 for one of these volumes, you are definitely getting your money's worth. You are getting a lot of stuff. This also has end paper maps that show, sometimes they're different. In the same volume, sometimes the map at front will be of the way things are when the book starts, and then the map in the back will be how things were left out. Yeah, Diderot is all through here. Okay, great. He has a lot of entries. Fantastic. So, that book and other books like it put me in the mind of stuff like this, and I'm never going to have more congenial company for going through all aspects of that era than these two, than this book. Then we have an author, a historian whose name has already come up on this channel recently. The historian Adrian Tinniswood has a new book that's coming out, I think, in August about the English country house in the 20th century. Its evolution, its devolution, its fall into decadence and then irrelevance. When we got that advance copy, I pointed out that I've liked a lot of Adrian Tinniswood's work. And when I was looking at that volume and thinking ahead to when I get the finished copy, I was thinking how little of it I have. And then purely by chance, because the Brattle will provide, you only have to have a thought like that for the Brattle to start to notice. The one thing you shouldn't do is have a thought like, I could stand to have more Adrian Tinniswood, and then say, I'll look for it at the Brattle. If you do that, you won't find it, and you won't find anything else. You have to just have the thought. Don't tempt the gods. You just have to have the thought. I should probably have more of this author. And just leave it at that. But if you do, you will find gems. And I did today. I found his big book, The Verneys, about one particular family. There is the family estate in Buckinghamshire. This is a fantastic story. Leave it to Adrian Tinniswood to know that this is actually going to be true for quite a few long-standing, centuries-old noble families in the UK. There'll be this kind of a generational saga behind almost every one of them. There were Verneys who were great artists, great courtiers, right in the central orbit of royalty, great builders, buccaneer, a bunch of womanizers, a bunch of fantastic women. You could make a book like this about quite a few families, and for all I know, quite a few books like this have been done about quite a few families. But I remember loving this one. This came out, I probably got this from the publisher. This came out from Penguin in 2007. Okay, 2007 is a little early. I might not have been back in the reviewing game enough to get this thing. But I'm glad to have it now. I read it when it came out. I borrowed it from the bookstore and read it, really liked it. And now I have at least one other work of history by Adrian Tinniswood. And then we'll finish up with a person we saw on an earlier Brattle haul, Neil Ferguson, the historian Neil Ferguson. I found a hardcover copy of his The World of War, which I already had. I already had a trade paperback of it. And the only reason that I got it from the Brattle is because of the Yankee Clipper. Because he got the hardcover and filled it with clippings, lovingly tended clippings. And I thought, for $1, I will definitely get the hardcover and just get rid of the paperback. But I want this previous Bookish person's volume. That was a reminder to me that when I'm at the Brattle, I should look at the hardcover copies of big histories, biographies that I already have. I should look at those volumes. I take them out of the cart and look at them on the chance that the Yankee Clipper actually sold them to the Brattle, or they were sold when the Yankee Clipper died. One way or another, in almost all cases, if I find a volume like that of a title that I already have, but that's been lovingly tended like that by a previous Bookish person, I'm going to want the second volume and get rid of the one that I have. I'm going to want to replace those volumes. And I found another example of that today. The Russell Kirk book, that was a surprise because it's a paperback. This is a big hardcover. I'm glad I looked at it. It's also Neil Ferguson. It's The Pity of War, explaining World War I. And once again, the Yankee Clipper has been all through this, just filled it with clippings just all through the book. Amazing. I predicted it the first few times that I found some of these volumes, and it has turned out to be true, that reading the clippings is as much fun as rereading the book. Reading the clippings and wondering what the person who put them in there thought about them. Just wonderful. I'm so honored to be able to keep some of these books for a little while longer, instead of running the risk of them not being bought, not being cared about, and then being thrown away. At least they get to be in one other Bookish person's library a little bit longer. And I will continue the tradition. I know it's silly. I know I'm personifying a previous book collector who's probably dead and wouldn't have known me from Adam. Nevertheless, I am. And I'm going to continue the tradition. So, for instance, if there were in the National Review or whatever some sort of essay about Russell Kirk, I will clip it out, date it, trim it, and put it in that Russell Kirk book. And the same thing is true with books about the origin of World War I. There's plenty of room left in here for more clippings. I will continue the tradition. And that's it. That was my another trip to the Brattle. What is this, the second one this week? So we have Pity of War by Neil Ferguson. We have The Vernies by Adrian Tinniswood, a classic author by. Glad I have it, though. It's the one book of his that I would have wanted. The Age of Napoleon by Will and Ariel Durant. British Dogs from the Britain in Pictures series. One Boy's Boston by Samuel Eliot Morison. The World of Herodotus by the person I consider to be Herodotus' greatest translator. I, Virgil by David Wishart, not in a crappy UK paperback, but in a hardcover with a mylar cover. We have Hours in a Library by Leslie Stevens, but only volume 3. I'll have to keep an eye out for volumes 2 and 1. The Wish Song of Shannara, the third book in the Shannara series. Edmund Burke, A Genius Reconsidered by Russell Kirk. My Search for Warren Harding, pure blast from the past. Can't wait to see if I like it at all, if maybe my fiction evaluating talents have changed since the late 1980s. And then finally, these 3 books by, who is it, Julia Cayward, on Plum 3 Publishing. An intrepid crime-solving publisher in England. Go figure. So there you go. That was my trip to the Brattle. No trips to the Brattle this weekend. So I won't be back until next week. We will see what we will see. Maybe I will be back. Maybe I won't. One way or another. I'm going to wrap this up, but I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.